the meeting started.
Good morning and
Namaskaram. This is Ratna Singh, a young climate activist from Bharat, welcoming you all in this wonderful session hosted by Chemical Waste Pollution and CYMG. In today's session, we are going to have a very wonderful guest who is Mario Galbert. Mario Galbert is an environmental and climate policy advocate with over 5 years of experience in sustainable development and advocacy. He strongly believes that everyone has right to clean, healthy, and sustainable environment that must be protected under international laws. This is coupled with his strong advocacy for tearing down the architecture around that remains of slavery and for the upliftment of the people of African descent. He is currently pursuing master's degree in international public and development management at the University of Western Indies. He is the director at Children of the Marfa Recognition, Justice, Development Project, intern coordinator of Caribbean Youth Climate, of the Caribbean Youth Climate Council, and the founder and executive director of the Global Sustainable Development Network. Mario is experienced in intergovernmental environmental governance processes focused on biodiversity, climate change, oceans, and chemical waste. I'm so glad for Mario for joining to having you in this session. But before we proceed and giving the floor to Mario, I would like to let the people know just a few things to keep in your mind while entire the session. That please keep yourself muted entire the session. If you want to ask any question or any queries, you can write down in the chat box or you can just raise your hand. But for the favor, we are going to have an Q&A session at the end of the session. So you can definitely ask your all queries there. Now we are proceeding and calling Mario on the floor. Thank you. Over to you. Sorry, Mario, you are muted.
Are you
Hello,
hearing me
Mario,
clear?
you are. Yeah.
Great.
Got
Hi, everyone. And just to say, I am no stranger to the working group. Sorry. I am the SITS facilitator for the Children Youth Major Group, the UNEP. So I am fortunate enough to, be engaging with you all today. Are you seeing my slides? My slide?
yes,
Are
sir,
you
yes, sir,
seeing this?
visible, sir.
Okay, great. So today, of course, the topic that we're looking at, of course, is the sound management of chemicals and waste. And of course, you're looking at it from the perspective that we are doing, a review in terms of what happened at the first review session of the first review session or resumed first session of the ad hoc open-ended working group on the creation of a science policy panel on the sound management of chemicals and waste and to prevent pollution. Of course, the resolution was agreed upon at UNEA 5.2. It is, sorry, I'm getting some feedback as well. Is someone's mic open?
No worries. You can
Okay. All
continue.
right, so okay, great. So the resolution that was adopted at UNEA 5.2, relays the creation of a science policy panel undertaking horizon scanning. And if you know what the horizon scanning is, it's looking at what happens in the future. And I think, it's looking at what is happening. It's giving in-depth information using science-based, or policy-related, science-based information that should support policy. UNEP usually undertake horizons. I think they're in the process of doing a new segment of horizon scanning, and so to identify different issues. So in the case of the panel will identify issues related to chemicals and waste, And I'll go further to speak about the aspect that causing issues within the negotiation, which is to prevent pollution. So, what based on what we see is that a resolution, says, the panel should identify issues of relevance to policymakers and, where possible, proposing evidence-based options to address them. So, what are the core elements of the resolution? Or a core element of the resolution says, identify clearly that a principal function or principal functions that the panel should have must include the following. It must undertake the horizon scanning, and of course, as I said to you, the horizon scanning will identify issues that the panel must address. Of course, these must be relevant to policymakers or must be relevant to the issues of the panel, or what the panel is for. And of course, horizon scanning should also look into providing information that is, can be supported by science. And this, process must be evidence-based. Additionally, the resolution also said, the panel must conduct assessments of current issues and identify potential evidence-based options to address, where possible, those issues, in particular those relevant to developing countries. Of course, you'll also see further down, where discussion came by, at the OEWG meeting about, those issues, about identifying those issues and the capacity of countries. A fourth function was to providing up-to-date and relevant information, identifying key gaps in scientific research, encouraging and supporting communication between scientists and policymakers, explaining and disseminating findings for different audiences, and raising public awareness. These stated clearly, facilitating information sharing with countries, in particular developing countries seeking relevant information, scientific information. So those are what they agreed upon at UNEA 5.2 in Kenya. Those are the policy relevant position that they said, those are what, they said that was needed to be addressed by this new panel on, chemicals and waste. And so, that was what, a core functional element, or that is what the OEWG should work on when developing the panel. Additionally, so that's the function, but then we're going to go to scope. So a part of the resolution, stated clearly, it says also decides that the ad hoc open-ended working group will prepare a proposal for the science policy to consider the following issues: institutional design. How should the panel should be designed? The governance of the panel, the name and the scope of the panel, because even though it says, science policy panel and the science policy panel and the scope and function, there is no definition as to, there is no decision at the moment as to what should be the name of the panel. So even though, currently we say, okay, it's the science policy panel on sound management of chemicals and waste, there is no official name as yet. So even in the negotiation, you'll see, okay, it's only reference to, there's no decision as yet. But that's also another discussion. So the principal function of the panel are set out in paragraph 2 of the present resolution, while respecting mandates of relevant, multilateral agreements on other institutionals and intergovernmental bodies. There was a discussion to ensure that there's no overlap on the duplication of work and promote coordination and cooperation. Of course, there is, another core element of the resolution that says, the relationship of the panel with, there's a focus on, what relationship to key stakeholders, existing panels, international bodies, civil society, and different organizations. And of course, just going through what are some of the core elements of the panel so that you can, have an understanding of what it is that, the resolution says clearly. So whatever you see here comes directly from the resolution itself. Of course, it continues to say is that, some of the panel or the OEWG must also determine processes for determining and executing the work program of the panel. So this is OEWG, arrangements for identifying and engaging with experts to contribute to the work of the panel, procedures for the review and adoption of reports and assessment produced by the panel, arrangement for the secretariat work, options for voluntary financing for the panel, rules of procedure, etc., etc., etc. These are core functions of what the ad hoc working group should look at, or what it should do. So again, you'll see that this at the front was the function of the panel, or as a scanning assessment of the report information sharing. And one important, while we're there, one important fact that you may not see is the issue of capacity building is missing. And then we go to what should the open-ended working group do? Institutional design, governance panel, name and scope the panel, principal function of the panel, relationship with other panels, processes for determining the work of the panel, so program of work, identifying and engaging with experts, providing reviews and adaptation of reports, what should be the role of the secretariat in terms of the support, volunteer financing, principles or operating principles, etc. And then I believe that crucial segments that should be given to you here was how the agenda set up. So there was election of officers, adoption of the agenda and other matters, adoption of rules of procedure, adoption of the agenda itself, organizational matters, general statements, options for timetable, and organization of work of the ad hoc open-ended working group, and the proposals of preparations for the establishment of a science policy panel. You may ask me, why do I have this? But because I'm giving you an overview or review of the entire meeting, I want to ensure that you have everything. So first of all, it was stated that there should be no general statements. Some states did, some states didn't do that, but there was a little bit of back and forth, because if you understand the environment that we were in at the time, was that there was the still Europe conflict that was also influencing the discussion. So when it comes on to the election of officers, European countries, I think it's Eastern European countries, I think those countries where Russia is included, there were some issues. So they couldn't, identify their election of officer at that point in time. So I think they don't have representatives up to now. So there is adoption of the agenda took a while, but we were procedure. And of course, be reminded that there was a first meeting. So this was a resumed first meeting of the ad hoc open-ended working group. So we were, just continuing on the agenda item, going through. So before we usually have a stakeholders preparatory meeting before. And of course, the stakeholders preparatory meeting, we delve into a lot of information as to see what we believe should be the core function of the panel in itself. For example, we had a discussion before the Sunday before the meeting starts in Bangkok. And of course, there were different discussion as to what should be the approach of the panel. First of all, there was an integrated, there was a common, agreement that the panel must have an integrative approach, which means that we need to look at the value chains. So we should not only look at where the pollution is happening, or where the chemicals and waste is doing the spilling, but where it starts from. So we need to look at that. And then, because we're looking at chemicals and waste, other processes were influencing this process. So you'll see constantly that while we were there, people would make reference to the fact that the plastic treaty, where the IMC meeting is also happening or will be happening, and we need to look at that to see how that pans out. And of course, a very general discussion looked at in terms of the preparatory meeting for stakeholders. There was a clear understanding, or there was a clear agreement that the panel scope should cover integrative areas of chemicals, waste, and the pollution. But remember, the naming of the resolution in itself is a challenge, because it says science policy panel to contribute further to the sound management of chemicals and waste, and to prevent pollution. So What is it, a general, conversation that was happening was that, it says prevent pollution, but not and pollution, but to prevent pollution. And then there was different discussion to say, how can we prevent pollution? We can maybe minimize pollution, but how can we prevent it? And so there was also discussions by different people in different rooms on that. So in terms of the, how do we approach the panel? There was, different agreement or different discussion as to whether or not the panel should be open or closed. And of course, closed means that there will be a very clear list of what must be addressed by the panel. A very clear list. Are we going to look at only these amount of chemicals? Um, are we going to look at about this type of waste? And then open means a flexible policy interface, which will have a open what can be addressed. So there's not, we're not going to say, okay, we'll just only look at these in 33, but ensure that the panel can be integrative in approach that whatever future waste or so comes by or develop, it can also be
Yeah.
incorporated and reviewed. If you're not speaking, please turn off your mic. Thank you. Um, so that is it in terms of how the approaches. So again, close. So again, it's a panel, and I think the idea or the conversation around these closed or open approaches, came about because the BRS conventions, as you can see, they have a set list or they have a number of chemicals that they focus on. I think it's about 53, but there are thousands of chemicals are available, that we don't have any information on, any data on, any science on. And so, there is this, agreement that, we should not focus, solely on some, chemicals, or we should not have a closed list, but an open list of chemicals that, will allow the policy interface to become flexible. Of course, further discussions, MGS discussions, and again, MGS means major groups and stakeholders. We identify some things in terms of what the panel should cover: CO2, which is carbon dioxide, water, power-related chemicals, types of pollution, light pollution, noise pollution, and finally, there was agreement that we need to have an open list because if we close the list, then we'll not be able to cover much. In the we went in there with a position, in a sense, what, as a major group and stakeholder, and our position was not just a general youth washing statement, but one that was in line with the entire discussion that was happening at the time. And of course, if at any time you need additional information, you can just type in OEWG 1.2. There's a web page. You'll see meeting documents or in-meeting document submissions. You'll get an entire list of information or a lot of information that can support you if you want to prepare better. Of course, we, rules of procedures. We supported the position to have major groups and stakeholders mechanisms for the panels, similar to the Global Environment Outlook. And if you know, I think ASEAL should be more familiar with the Global Environment Outlook, in terms of the stakeholders mechanism, where we have the IMAG, of course, and other advisory groups, where we have young people, different major groups, appointing people or supporting people's nominations for these for this global environment outlook. And I think we're currently in the G7 outlook, and so we also supported the nomination of a few people to be on those. And so we, as a major group and stakeholder constituency, supported having the global environment outlook, type. But in terms of rules of procedure, we also said that we supported having the SPP as having the UNEA rules of procedure, which means that major groups and stakeholders will officially be have their role in this science policy panel, or else we'll be competing with other youth constituencies, or not competing, but trying to get a space in the place, and we would not have MGCY, or I'm sorry, not MGCY, Children Engagement Group, TUNEP, as the official constituency coordinating youth engagement. Of course, we also supported a broad scope, which means equal attention to three working streams: so chemicals, waste, and pollution, including pollution of air, water, soil, and oceans. So we did not limit, or suggest that the panel should not limit, what its scope should be. The reason why, as I said to you before, is that if we limit the scope, this is like the third panel, and this officially is one of the major panels on chemicals and waste. And if we limit the panel, then it means that we're going to limit the work, which means that we're not going to take into consideration future chemicals, waste, and pollution, which we don't want to limit. Of course, we said that the objective of the panel should include, environmental human rights component, and it should be included as according to UN Resolution 76/300, where which recognize the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Core function, demanded that capacity building be one of the core functions of the panel. And I think this one is one of the most debated. I think it should be the fifth function at this point in time, and it's still not, agreed upon by the parties. So it's still in bracket. Intersessional work, Secretariat should call for submissions from major groups and stakeholders. What we noted that, in terms of our position was that, even though there was, open call for us to, make submissions before the meeting in January, and at the meeting in January, there was no set regulation or no set, guideline to say what is it that we can do during the intersessional period. So intersessional period did not have, much to say, okay, cool, major groups and stakeholders will be able to submit statements during the intersessional period. So it still wasn't clear to us what would be our function. And so we asked for us to be able to submit it, and we got support at that point in time. So when at the end of the meeting, major groups and stakeholders were included in the submission period for the other aspects of the panel that will be debated at OEWG 1.3. Youth capacity. Youth, so at the OEWG, we said, there should be capacity building. We agreed, member states also agreed with us at a point in time that, there should be what I consider as a more capacity building during the intersessional period, because we needed to know more as to what it is. We needed more information, more webinars. And so, there was an agreement that more should be done during that period. And of course, we met with many stakeholders and parties, member states, in terms of, we informed them about the establishment of our intention to seek support for the establishment on the youth expert group on chemicals, waste, and to prevent pollution, in order to support youth going into the meeting. What were some of the, the member state positions? Of course, there was they supported an integrated approach with other existing frameworks. There was, an agreement that, limited scope may result in a lesser successful panel. Of course, there were several, comprehensive interview assessments of, the IPCC, IPCC, and the IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. IBES is the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity Ecosystem Services. And then you have the GEO, which is Global Environment Outlook. What was happening there? They were trying to identify the gaps and to say what it is that, was happening, or what is it that should happen, or what is it, that the panel should do. Because of course, as I said to you, capacity was the main aspect of things. And, this, gave an idea as to what the panel should do, what should be the core function of the panel, who should be a part of the panel, how do you, identify, the expert who should be a part of the panel. And so there were different discussions about that. So there was little to no support for capacity building as the fifth core function of the panel. And I say little to no support. This should be from mainly global north countries, because when you say support, there was an idea that support means money. And if you know what that means, it's, a challenge. So there was little to no support from the global north countries about, the panel should support, should be a core function or objective should be to provide funding of the to developing countries. So we're still debating on that. You should see further debates on that going forward. But of course, a concern by developing countries was, the lack of capacity, limited amount of data available to support any effective panel. And of course, there was conversation that, there was need for more to be done in terms of people engaging, different, stakeholders engaging. And if there wasn't much stakeholders engaging, that means, there would be issues in having an effective panel. Of course, member states we know from the different regions, Latin America and the Caribbean, and of course African Union, African region, were saying, okay, if you don't give us capacity building as a core function, then it means that one, we will not have enough um, data from our region available to allow effective the panel to effectively do its work, and if which means that we cannot have a panel that will only focus on having more information from global north countries and leaving out the global south. And of course, that is it from me in terms of the presentation. Lots more to be said and lots more needed to be done. So thank you all. Hope you were listening carefully.